All right. So here we go. Episode 11, if you can believe that.
I believe it.
Yeah. Oh, you believe it? Oh, does that mean you're out of things to say? You're like done talking?
Well, I'm ready to answer some more questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's
there
do
you
it.
go. There you go. All right. Well, I was, a couple episodes ago, we were talking about some of your hunting trips, and I was thinking about it. This is your time of year. I mean, Saturday's the opener of duck season, so I know that getting all jacked up for that, and your 3 a.m., 4 a.m. wake up calls,
You got that?
and so we talked about your bear that you got. We talked about your cougar. We talked about what else?
Alligator.
Your alligator, but we did not talk about your buffalo. So let's tell me about your buffalo, because I know that was something. I mean, that was years in the making, years and years.
Yeah, I put in for about 13 years. You don't just go down and buy one of those over-the-counter tags. And as I recall, it was after I drew out. It was $400 for the tag, and I hired a guide to take me, and we went down by Hanksville and spent 2 days down there riding up on the Henry Mountains looking for a herd of buffalo, and we're not successful. And he went into over by where Paul lives, over in Teesdale, and there was a guy over there, and he got him, and we rode horses. We actually started in Capitol Reef National Park and rode east until we rode out of the park, and finally we found a herd of buffalo, and I was shooting a 300 short mag, and my comfortable range is about 300 yards. And he says, we were out about 500 or 600 yards. He says, "Can you shoot it from here?" And I said, "Nope." So we get to about 400 yards. He says, "How about now?" And I said, "Nope." He says, "Can you tell the difference between a cow and a bull?" And I says, "Nope. That's why I hired you." Before we started, before I got the tag, you had to take this test and try to tell the difference between a bull and a cow. And I got 50% right. So,
How can you tell the difference?
well, the only way I could tell the difference was from the back end, and if I could see something hanging down, I knew it was a bull. But other than that, the bull has a little larger horns, and they're normally a little bigger. But if you get a younger bull, there's no way there was no way I could tell. But the guide, he had enough experience with it, so he went up with me. And when we got
So was your tag for a male or a female?
no, it was for a cow.
Okay.
The reason is I'd put in for like 13 years, and they told me it was going to be another 4 or 5 years before I could draw out. And I was 70 already, and I didn't know if I was going to live long enough to draw out for a bull. So I switched over and drew out for a cow. So anyway, when we got within 300 yards, I said, "Yeah, I can do this one." And so he told me which one. He said he pointed out one that was a cow, and so I shot it and dumped it. But it was really fun. They always say when you pull the trigger, the fun's over. But in this case, that was not, because they had 4 guys, and we had 2 horses to pack the meat out, and all I did was held 1 foot for about 10 minutes while they skinned it. And what surprised me is when we got it all skinned and laid out, they just left it there. And they were going to go get a couple of more pack horses. We'd ridden 5 horses in, but and then they just left it there. And I says, "Well, aren't you afraid of the coyotes or something coming and getting it?" And he said, "They've never bothered it before, not fresh meat. If you left it here for 2 or 3 days, then they'd come and start after it." So we left, and the next morning we rode back in and packed it all up and hauled it out. But anyway, it was a fun trip. It was.
That's cool. What? So I know you got it mounted. What? Did you do something with the cape?
Well, the most of the cape went into the shoulder mount. It's a shoulder mount, and there was a little bit left, and I gave it to the guide. He wanted to make some shaps out of it.
Okay.
And so I just let him have it. I didn't have any use for it.
Whatever. You could have had some killer chaps for riding your motorcycle. Think about that. Big old freaking buffalo chaps when you're all like,
Yeah, never thought about that.
oh, yeah. Well, we're going to get you some sheep chaps for Christmas, I think, maybe.
There you go.
That's funny. That's cool. So how much meat, like poundage wise?
I got a couple of 100 pounds of meat out of there. A pretty big, good sized animal. I really got hooked on one. I had a friend of mine that was going after a buffalo. He was going to buy one. You can buy him out at Antelope Island for the meat. And I says, "I'll go in half with you. Just if you want to give me the hind quarters, you can have the rest of it." Well, if you look at a buffalo, all the meat's in the front half. And so when he brought me what I got and what I paid for it, this is the whole hind quarters? And he said, "Well, that's what you asked for." And so this was years ago before I'd ever been buffalo hunting, and I never even thought about it because on an elk or a cow or anything else, the hind quarters is where most of the meat is. But anyway.
That's cool. So 100 pounds worth of meat. What else did you get out of it? I mean, I know with elk, you get to keep their teeth. Did you keep, I mean, are they,
I took, what I did is I made a European mound out of the head. All of the mounts that you get don't have the original skull in it.
Except for?
The alligator.
Ding.
Ding, ding.
You taught me that. That's why I knew.
Because, they shrink. And so I took and boiled the skin off of they skinned the head and used it on the mount, the leather, the fur. But the skull, I boiled it out and made a European mount out of it.
That's cool. So you got it on a board somewhere, like hanging someplace?
No, it's just propped up next to the fireplace down the basement with the rest of the stuff.
That's cool. I don't know if I've ever noticed that, the buffalo skull. I've seen the mount, hanging on the wall, but
yeah, it's there.
So you've done a couple of European mounts, yeah?
I've done several. I've got. I went to Texas hunting wild boar, and I've got a European mount of that. I did a bear. I had a bear done when I shot the bear up in Canada, and taxidermist up there did a European mount on the skull. That just threw it in. But I did a cougar and.
Tell me about your cougar. European mount. How did you do that one?
Yeah, right. I talked to a taxidermist, and what he told me to do is I took that up to up into Idaho to have it mounted, and the taxidermist up there, he skinned it all out and just gave me the skull, and that still had all the meat and the eyes and all that still in it. And they told me what you do is just put it in a bucket of water and let it sit for a couple of months, and just let the meat rot off of it, and then you just boil it, and it'll all fall off. So I did that. I got a 5-gallon bucket and put the skull in it, and just put a lid on it and put it out in the garage. And it was, by the time I got around to it, it was well into the summer, and it got pretty ripe. And my wife was out looking all around the garage trying to find what the heck was the odor out there, and couldn't find it. And she went off to some girls' camper, and while she was gone, I got it out and boiled it off and took care of it. And when I told her what it was, she was not too happy with me about.
Did you at least write like wheat or rice on the side of the bucket so she knew not to open it?
Well, it was snapped on pretty tight. It was one of those buckets that you have sheetrock mud in, and they snap on pretty tight. They seal pretty good, and you have to have pretty good fingers to pull them off.
That's funny. That's surprising to me that you didn't they didn't tell you to put any bleach or any something in there to keep that odor down.
Yeah, well, they didn't, and I didn't. They just el natural, I just let her rot.
You bet. Well, it could have been worse, You could have just left it in the backyard and let the maggots get it, So it's
They do, they have ants or something they put in with them that eat that doesn't take very long that they put those skulls in and let them eat the meat off of it.
That's crazy. Seems like a good horror movie or something like that. Just pour some honey on it and put them out in the desert, That's funny. So you got a European mount. Now let me ask you, with a European mount, do you mount it to a board, or is it just the skull?
You can do it either way. I've seen them, all the ones that I have. I just have the skull sitting on a shelf. The cougar and the bear, the buffalo is pretty big, and I've got it leaning against a log that I have. I have a swan mounted on the log, and I just leaned the buffalo head on it. So, but I've seen them where they mount them and put them on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if yours were all just loosey goosey like that.
Yeah, they are. Well, I got the cougar head, and it's kind of fun to see the size of the skull when you see the size of the mount. The head, the actual is substantially smaller. There's a lot of fat and meat around the skull before when you look at the size of the head on the bear especially.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd have to. I've seen your. I've seen your ram and your cow skull pretty up close, but I haven't really.
You have.
I haven't really paid. I haven't seen your other ones, so that's interesting. I didn't realize they were that much smaller. So what you're telling me is my skull probably isn't as big as my head.
No, I don't think you got as much fat on yours as they do.
Oh, I don't know. Just in between the ears, I guess. Well, that's cool. So when you went down and hunted the wild boar, how did you get hooked up to go down hunting wild boar?
Well, I was, I'm always looking for an opportunity. And I was just down the Lee K Center shooting, and I ran into one of the range officers down there. We started talking about AR-15s, and I didn't have one, and he was telling me the kind that I should buy and which one's the good ones. And he had 2 or 3 of them, and he said he wanted to take his AR-15 and go down to Texas and hunt wild boar. And so I said I'd be interested in that, and he says, "Well, let me check it out." And I says, "What's your phone number?" And then I started calling him about it. And so about 3 weeks later, we're heading out across New Mexico towards Texas, and went clear down to Corpus Christi. I think it was right close to the coast, and hunted wild boars. Now there is no limit on them. They're like pests. That there is no limit. There is no restrictions on how you harvest them. There is you can't believe the damage they do down there, and it's like they go out into a grain field or something. And it's like somebody's plowed it. I mean, they root like you can't believe. But they've been hunted so much down there now that they are really skittish, and they don't come out to feed until after dark. And so when we went, had the guide, we had our AR-15s, and we might as well have left them home, because he had night vision goggles, and we would go out in an electric golf cart. Because if you came out in a 4-wheeler at night, them hogs would be gone. You had to just be super quiet. And he'd look around with his night vision goggles and find one, and then he'd just point at it. And he had one rifle with a night vision scope on it, a 308, and we took turns shooting. So he'd point at one, and then you'd swing the scope around because it has a lot smaller field of vision, and find the hog, and then you'd shoot it. And those things are so skittish that he pointed out one, and I swung around on it and took the thing off safety, and just the click of taking it off safety, those hogs were on the dead run. And I took a crack at him, and he was mad at me. He said, "You're supposed to ease off on the safety." And I said, "You're supposed to tell me in advance." So anyway, we went and found another one, and I ended up shooting a good sized boar. We all got one, but we ended up, there were 3 of us. We ended up with 4 hogs, but it was quite an experience. He was quite the guy. He was making fun of me. He had me tie the rope on him. We strung him up, and he skinned him. And he said, and he told me to tie it off to this tail. And so I was making all these knots and that. And he said, "If you don't know a knot, tie a lot." Anyway. He had a good time.
That's cool. And did you keep all the meat from that?
Oh, sure. We brought it back, and I had it cut and wrapped, and we took some big coolers with us, and got some dry ice and put in there, and brought them back from Texas. We drove all the way down. It was 2 days down and 2 days back. And we hunted for 3 days while we were there. But it was some of the best pork I've ever eaten. Them steaks and the pork chops was just out of this world. They were really good.
That's awesome. Why did you drive?
Well, 2 or 3 money. you could drive down there, and there was 3 of us that were going. You split the gas, and then we thought that we might get a couple of 3 hogs apiece, and
So you went down a little overconfident.
yeah, we did. We had coolers stacked up over the roof. So, but anyway, the guide, we were hunting on private property, and I think he controlled how many you got, because the fog would roll in every night from the ocean, and we couldn't hunt until after dark, and we hunted 3 days, and so we'd go out and start hunting, and if the fog was going to come in a little later, he said, "Oh, we're not going to go out until 8 o'clock tonight." And at 9:30, 10 o'clock, here it'd come rolling in the fog, and you couldn't see anything. So he made sure that we each got 1, and we ended up with 1 extra that we divided the meat up. But yeah, some of those places, I've seen videos on them where they were dumping them left and right, but we got 1, but it was worth it. I really enjoyed myself, and besides that, it's like I just come back from Alaska fishing, and I brought back 80 pounds of salmon, and Linda tells me, "Now you don't give away any of the halibut, none, and be sparing on the salmon." Yeah, well, after we had fish for 3 weeks in a row, she's not so anxious to eat fish again, and I think that'd be the same way with a boar. One was enough.
That's cool. No, that makes sense. I think I was done with the bear the first time I ate it with you. I thought that was enough. I was like, done. I ate it.
Well, I had the I was a young man's president. I had the boys over and I cooked them up some bear meat and elk meat and stuff. And I said, you need to try it just so you can tell people that you've had it. You don't have to like it, especially, but I didn't think it was too bad. It was okay. I wouldn't want to eat a lot of it.
No. That's why we harvest cows, because those are scrumdiddlyumptious. So
there you go. I agree with you.
That's cool. So you hunted. Have you ever put in for a moose?
No, I never have. The reason is because you can only put in for one limited entry animal at a time. And I decided I wanted a buffalo, and so I put in for the buffalo. And by the time I started putting in for it, I was in my 50s, and it took me until I was 70, to draw out. And it was too late to start over on moose. I'd love to do it. I'd love to go, but I'm getting to that age. I don't think I could hike the mountains like I used to.
Yeah, and that's why it's kind of a nice thing, as you've gotten older, they've invented more and more things to make life easier.
That's true. The last time I went elk hunting, we shot 3 elk and drove a 4-wheeler right to all 3 of them. We didn't have to carry them out, but I've carried them out. Boy, I'm telling you, you take a half a elk and put it on your back. I had about 80 pounds on my back trying to hike up a hill, and it was steep to hike out of there, man. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that or not again.
Oh, no kidding. I remember when you and I went muzzle loading, and you shot a deer down in the saddle, right down, first rip in the morning. And it was a pretty good sized deer. It was like a 4-point.
Yeah, it was.
And we cut off its legs and tied the stick in between his horns and dragged that damn thing straight up the side of that mountain. And we got it back to your truck on the side of the road, put it in the back of the truck, drove it into Loa, and dropped it off. And you were like, all right, let's go get you a deer. I was like, screw that. Let's go see a movie. Like, I'm done. So, like, yeah, I can only imagine carrying an elk, you know.
Yeah, that was we boned it out, but there was still there was still I mean, an elk is a lot bigger than a deer.
No, and that's it. That's the thing. That's where it's like you look at, you know, having to carry that stuff, and yeah. So I mean, I think you'd be okay. I mean, you see the rig that I'm that's coming, and I think you'd be able to get a moose and haul it out.
There
it
you
wouldn't
go.
be a big deal.
I don't think I'll ever live long enough to draw, though.
You'd be surprised. So I had a missionary companion, and he drew a moose tag when he was 18 years old.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Nope. Like first put in, first put out. And like just sometimes that's lack of a better term, it's the luck of the draw. I mean,
Yeah. What they do is they take so many of the tags, and it's just luck of the draw. And the rest of them you put in, and then they take the oldest, then one with the most number of points. And yeah, you can do it. I had a friend of mine that drew out the first year on a buffalo, and I put in like 14 or 15 years before I drew out.
That's what I'm saying. It's the lottery, man. You got to be in it to win it. So
There
you can't just sit back and be like, "Oh, I never win," and never put in.
There you go. Yeah, I've been putting in for antelope in Utah. But anyway,
Is that your next big one that you're after?
I've shot 2 or 3 antelope, and that was an experience too. I went with a friend of mine. I drew out in Wyoming, and went up by Evanston, and there was a fellow I got quite friendly with, and he took me out, and it was on a muzzleloader hunt, and we saw these down this herd of antelope down on this bottom in this sagebrush, tall sagebrush. So we start putting a sneak on them, and pretty soon I'm down on my hands and knees and trying to get close enough. With a muzzleloader, my old muzzleloader, I had to get within 100 yards. There was no use even shooting. And so the guy I was with, he told me, he says, "You just go on by yourself." And so I'm down like they taught me in the Army, with my elbows out to the side and my rifle in the hook of my arms, belly crawling down through the sagebrush. And the sagebrush was getting shorter and shorter. But I could see one that was up there a little ways, and I thought if I made it up to that one, it would be about 110 yards, and I was going to try a shot from there. And so I kept sneaking up towards this sagebrush, and when I got there, I stuck my head up, and those antelope are very, very curious, and they'd come up to see what was coming up. And there they were standing about 40 yards away from me, looking at me like the Indians on the ridge. And I stood up, and then they took off on the dead run, and I whipped up to this muzzle loader, and the first one I saw with horns, I pulled the trigger and dumped it. I shot it right through the neck, and that thing dumped right up on its tail end. Its butt was right in the air, and its head was down in the sagebrush. And the guy I was with said, "You stay here by the antelope, and I'll go get the truck, because if we go back for the truck with all this sagebrush and stuff, we'll never find it again." So I said, okay. So I sat there, and he went to finally I got tired of waiting, and so I stuck my rifle next to the antelope and put. I had to have one of those orange hats, and I stuck it on top of the rifle so I could see it pretty easy. And then I started to walk, and I walked back towards the truck. We get the truck and get the knives and all the stuff out and go down go down to take care of the antelope. And when we get there, there's the antelope standing next to my gun, and it wasn't dead, and the thing took off, and there was my gun standing next to it, and I couldn't finish it off. So anyway, we went down and got the muzzle loader and started chasing it, and that thing would go over one hill and then stop, and we'd go over the hill and see it on the other side, and then we'd go after it, and it'd get just almost into range, and it'd take off again. And we chased it for about 2 miles, and finally I got around, and I shot a couple of 3 times at it and missed it, trying these long shots, and finally I got around so I was broadside and dumped it, and then we had to pack it where we'd driven to it before. Had to pack it back to the 2 miles back to the truck because there was a big gully between us. But anyway, the other time I went with this guy. This time it was with my 243, and it came this big. It was a nice one. Antelope was coming up and it had like 20 females with it.
So it was a baller.
It was, yeah, and they call them perimeter bucks. They keep trying to sneak in and get in on a little of the action. And this big old buck, he'd keep running back and chasing them off and herding these up this canyon. And we were sitting there waiting. And when it got within about 250, 300 yards, he said, "Okay, this is as close as it's going to get." And I says, 300 yards? I'd never shot anything 300 yards with this 243. And he said, "What'd you sight it in for?" And I said, 100 yards? He says, "You got to be kidding me." He says, "Hold it about 6 inches over its back and touch it off." And so I did, and down it went, bam. So we get over there, and he says, "Where's your knife?" I said, "I didn't bring one." He says, so he pulls out a knife. He says, "You got a rope?" I said, "No." He says, "Where's your camera? You going to take any pictures?" And I said, "Nope." And he says, "What did you bring?" And I said, "You." And he had all the equipment and stuff. He took pictures of it and helped me clean it out, and we hauled it back. And that one's mounted down the basement also. But anyway, he was a real nice guy. I liked him a lot. Dave Maines was his name.
That's cool. That's funny. So, did you mount both those antelope?
I did. Yeah, I have 2 of them down. They're not side by each, by the way, because the one is so much bigger than the other one. The first one, there was a nice buck in that batch, but I didn't have time to pick it out. I just stood up. The first one I saw with horns, that's the one I shot at and dumped it. They were on the dead run, man, and they move.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's funny that you spent so much time sneaking up on them, and they knew you were there the whole time.
Yeah, they did. They came right to me. They were only, I thought I was 110 yards away, and they were within 30, 40 yards of me.
You're all, "I'm all sneaky, here I come, sneaking along," and they're all, "Hey, what's that guy doing over there?"
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's stellar. What else? Like, I know you've, how many different breeds of turkeys are there?
There are 5 different kinds. There's a Rio and a
Tinto.
A Miriam. There's a Rio and a Miriam and an Osceola and an Eastern and a Gould. as all 5 of the turkeys. And they had Merriam's is what they had here. And I went with my brother Paul and down on the boulders. And when they first put them out, they just barely put them out, and you couldn't hunt them, and then you had to put in. And I put in for 2 or 3 years, and finally drew out for a turkey. And he and I went scouting for him, and we've had some a friend of his down on the boulders. He's got a cabin down there, and he had a friend that rode horses and ran cows down there, and he told us where to go. And so we went down, and I called one in. And
How do you call in a turkey?
I've got a little wood box, and you make a sound like a hen, and it's during the mating season, and they come in and they strut. They fan their feathers out, and they come strutting in. And so I had a couple of hen decoys out there, and then it made a chirp like a hen, and it.
Does it sound like this?
No, that's that's what the tom does.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it sounds like that. It's just a little chirp is what the hen makes.
So how's the wood box work? I mean, what's that all about?
It's just a little square box about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches long and about an inch wide, and you put a little chalk on it, and you rub it back and forth, the 2 wood pieces together, and it makes a sound about like a hen.
Oh.
And anyway, I started chirping. That thing was gobbling, and it was over a quarter of a mile away, and it came all the way in until it came within about 20 yards of where I was sitting, and I shot that one. And I had I just had the tail feathers mounted on that one. And then I was up at a place called Tin Cup up in Idaho, and I was hunting elk, and it was raining like a sucker, and we were trying to find a place to go after elk, and there was a parking lot there, and there was a guy there from Missouri, and we started talking to him about elk hunting. He came out here elk hunting. And we started talking about turkeys, and he said I said, would you take me, guide me in Missouri to get an Eastern, because they're a whole different breed. And he said, you don't need to have a guide in Missouri. Anybody can kill a turkey there. And I said, so what you're telling me is I'll just fly into Kansas City and get my shotgun and walk off the edge of the tarmac and start hunting. And he says, well, he started to laugh. He says, well, it isn't quite that easy. I says, well, I'd pay you $100 if you'll guide me. And he said, oh, I can do that. I says, well, you're going to have to tell me where a hotel is around Kansas City, because I'm not familiar with that. And he says, well, I've got an extra little house on the farm. He said, you could stay there. And I said, well, that's worth $100. And he says, well, I says, you're going to have to get me an address where your place is. And he says, well, I could come and pick you up at the airport. And I says, well, that's worth $100. And he says, I think I can get my wife to feed us. And I says, well, that's worth $100. And I says, so you're telling me for $400 you'll take me turkey hunting, pick me up at the airport, and feed me? And he said, yeah, I'll do that. And I says, you got a deal. What's your name? And so he gave me his name and his phone number. And he said, give me a couple of weeks, because I drove out here and hunting, and I'll talk to my wife when I get back. So I gave him 2 weeks and called him. And he said, my wife says, yeah, you can come. So she says she'll cook for you. And then I found out that his wife was a partner in a law firm. And I thought, I wonder what the kind of a deal this is going to be. You know, I was a little nervous about the whole thing. But so anyway, we went back there and shot a couple of Easterns. And his wife laid off work from his law firm and cooked for us. And when we was through, I paid him, and he wouldn't let me give him a tip. And he said, and I want you to come back next year and hunt whitetail, but I don't want to be your guide. He says, I want you to come as my guest. And so we did. Went back the next year and hunted a whitetail deer. And then a couple of years later, we decided we got hooked up with some guy in Kentucky that for a different kind. This was for the Rios, and went into Kentucky and shot a Rio. And that was an experience too. This guy was an old game warden, and he was telling us how he caught all these people and how he'd lay for them and how he busted them for all kinds of stuff. I thought, boy, we're really going to be careful with this guy. And so we're riding around his truck, and we got our shotguns in the back of the truck in cases, empty. And we see these turkeys, and we jump out and we go around the back of the truck and get the guns out of the case and put some shells in it. And by the time we're ready to shoot, they're long gone. He says, well, it's okay if you have them in the truck. You don't have to have them cased. Pretty soon, it's okay if you have them in the truck and they're loaded. If you're, and the next thing you know, we're chasing him out across this field. He's driving, and I'm hanging out the window trying to shoot him out of the truck with a shotgun. But anyway, we ended up getting a couple of those too. And the guy from Missouri, he was with us. He'd never hunted them either. But so anyway, I got three of the five. One of them, the Gould is in Florida. The Osceola is in, or vice versa. One of them's in Mexico and one of them's in Florida. And when I was down after the alligator, they wanted like $2,500 for a turkey, and I decided to pass. But anyway, they brought some Rios into to southern Utah. But the problem is they got the Merriams on one side of the road and the Rios on the other side of the road, and told them, now you stay on your side of the road, and it didn't work. So what they've got now is a cross between a Merriam. A lot of them are a cross between a Merriam and a Rio down there.
So what do they call him? Do they call him a Miro, or do they call him like a?
They call him a mix.
Okay. That's not as fun. I think they should
not.
come up
They
with
had
a
to come
cool
up
name.
with a name. Yeah, really.
I'm just saying, that's kind of base. So back up just a second. So you went back out and shot. Did you get a whitetail?
I did. Yeah, it's mounted. That's down the basement.
How many did you get?
Wait, I just shot one.
Just one?
Yeah, I just. In fact, as I got it on the last day we were there, and we had to go to the airport. We were flying out, and he said, "Well, we'll go down on this one hayfield and on his own place." And this nice 4-point came out and was running across, and there was a row of trees there, and I swung around. It was on the dead run and shot. And I didn't know if I'd hit it or not, but I went running over there to see if to get beyond the trees to see if I could get another shot, and there it was laying there. I dumped it on the first crack on the dead run. Sometimes it's good to be lucky.
Hey, man, I'll take that 8 days a week. I've
Yeah.
always said that. It's better be lucky than good.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, when you were down there in Missouri, did they? How did they count that? Did they call it a 4-point or did they call it an 8-point?
Well, they call them an 8-point, but you know,
Or did it,
they
was it
count every point on both sides.
right? And they even count the little nub at the end.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised you didn't get yourself a 10-point down there. That's pretty damn good. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'll never forget when I was in Michigan. That's how they were. Somebody told me that he shot a 4-point, and that he had it mounted in his living room, and I was like, no kidding. So I went in and I looked around, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, hey, my man, where's your mount? He's like, it's right there above the door, and there's like these 4 little pencils like hanging out. And I was like, what? So anyway, that's why I asked. That's cool. So what did you think of the meat on that whitetail?
It was. It has a little different taste than mule deer. It's a little milder, I think.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. It was okay.
Corn fed.
Corn, yeah, it's corn fed. They put out back there. He never, but they're all feed in the alfalfa fields and stuff. They don't eat sagebrush like the mule deer do.
Yeah. No, it's true. The other thing, you know what Ted Nugent said, true American hero. Ted Nugent said, if you can successfully hunt and kill a whitetail with a bow, you can successfully hunt and kill anything.
I never, the fellow that Jim Havens was his name, the guy from Missouri, but that's all he hunted with was a bow. He even hunted elk when he came out here. He hunted them with a bow, but he took us out with the rifles because he had a lot of time, and he had quite a bit of acreage on his that he owned. He had his own fish pond, and he had a nice place. And he had tree stands around, and he'd go sit these tree stands, but he shot everything he got with a bow. But we never had the time. It's like when I went to Canada after a bear, there was a fellow with us that hunted with a bow, and he got one. But man, when I was paying $3,000 or $4,000 to go up there and the airfare, and if I saw one, I wanted to make sure that I had the best chance that I could harvest it. So I've hunted a lot with a bow, and I haven't killed very much with a bow.
No, I'm just saying that's what Ted Nugent said. And like Ted Nugent, he's just that's a Ted Nugent saying. So that's why I brought it up. So that's cool. So whitetail deer. So you got 3 out of 5. You know, and so Florida and Mexico. What part of Mexico?
Just across the border, I think. I'm not sure. I never did look into it. The problem with going to Mexico is trying to get a gun across the border, and especially the way things are down there now. I just
I don't know. I don't know. Del Rio seems to, you'd be able to just walk across there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, really. Nobody'd even notice. You can mix right in. Now it'd look just like them from Haiti. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. That's funny. So, that's cool though, man. 3 out of 5, and one on the radar, so to speak, down there in Florida. Just got to be in it to win it. I'm just saying, you gotta put in, your $2,500.
Yeah, I guess so.
So that's cool. What else is on the list? I mean, if you were to, if you know, you've hunted most everything. You know, we've talked about. What about wolves? Have you ever like? I know that you were looking into it, but have you ever like really like gone after that?
I I have. And I've never hunted them, but I always wanted to. And the problem with the wolf is I looked into a place up in. You can't hunt them in the United States. Well, you can a little bit now. You can put in for them, but Canada you can, and so I called a guy up there and was trying to negotiate a thing out. But what they do is they put you in a place that's about twice as big as outdoor privy. It's long enough that it has a place you can lay down in, and they put some meat out in a snow pack out in front of you, 150, 200 yards. And then you sit there in this shack, and they put you there before daylight in the morning, and then they come and pick you up after dark at night, and you look out a little hole and watch the meat pack and see if anything comes in. And there's no guarantee. I says, well, what if you wait until the wolves come in and then call me, and I just hop on a plane and fly up? And he says, it doesn't work. I've tried it, because wolves are territorial, and they have to protect their territory. And so even though there's a lot of meat there and food there, they'll leave. The pack will leave and go check out the rest of their territory. So they might be there and they might not. I had another guy that I was, and what he did is he would chase them with snowmobiles and chase the pack. But I wasn't confident enough to, by the time I was 60 years old, climb on a snowmobile and go up through the wilds.
Man, that sounds like legit, though. I mean, you're chasing down wolves.
I really thought,
Wah!
I really, if I'd have been a better rider, I'd have done that. I just.
Well, that's why you ride, bitch. You just ride behind him, and then you got your guns going, you know?
Yeah, well, you had to run your own machine.
Ooh. That's what you pay him for.
That's what I thought, too, but that ain't the way it worked.
Maybe you get one of those little, like, I don't know, kind of like the things they put little kids in that, like, strap to the back of a car or back of a bicycle, and they, like, tow them around. You could just be back there.
Yeah, maybe on a dog sled or something. I don't know.
Just saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I really wanted to hunt one of those, but I checked with every time I go to the sports show, I'd try to find somebody who'd hunt wolves, and they had them, but most of the time they were on moose hunts. And if you happen to see a wolf while you were on a moose hunt, what's the other one that's up there? The caribou.
Okay.
If you're on a caribou hunt, I looked into hunting caribou. I thought that'd be fun too. But the problem is trying to get somebody to go with you. You know, I just.
Well, half of the hunts you tell me about is like with strangers and with people you just met. I mean, I don't know, like you're way more brave when it comes to that stuff, because I look at like stranger danger, and I look at people like, you know, it's like, hey, I just met this guy, he's got a gun, and I'm gonna go stay with him in Missouri. You know, to me that sparks like deliverance. You know, like you know, I'm like, you know, a little more cognizant of it, like. But so I mean, I'm sure that anywhere you went, you would make friends, and you would have lots of fun, and you'd shoot a lot of animals and eat a lot of dirt. But what? So, can you hunt moose in Canada? Just like get a moose tag, or is?
Yeah, you can. If you what they do is, in fact, is if you're not from Canada, you have to have a guide. And guides get so many tags, and so you can you can do it that way. But they're quite pricey. They're to get a moose tag up there is over $12,000.
Ooh,
So
I'd rather go shoot a rhino.
yeah, that's what I mean. So I'd love to go. I've never had any desire to hunt a lot of African animals, but I would love to see them. And it's always been my desire to go on an African safari. In fact, as I had one signed up and paid the $500 deposit, and I was going to go over with 2 or 3 other guys and just be an observer. And it was quite cheap. I could, after I got over there, it was only like $30 a day or something for board and room. And then I could go out and see all the animals and watch them hunt and just experience it. But that was when they had 9/11 is when it happened, and he backed out of the air flight, but it wasn't because of 9/11. It was because his son was going to go with him. He'd already been over there, and his son backed out on him, and he didn't want to go back over and shoot a bunch of animals without his boy. So he backed out. So they gave me my $500 back, and I didn't get to go.
I'd shoot a giraffe.
Giraffe? I don't think so.
What? I think that'd be awesome.
What they did is they were going over for 5 days, and if you wanted to hunt one day, then you'd have to pay that fee. And I was thinking about I wanted to shoot a warthog. They're so ugly, I think they're neat. And so I wanted to get one of those, but that was the only thing I was going to shoot.
Sounds like my mother-in-law. So ugly that it's just interesting.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, really.
But no, I mean I think you should shoot a rhino. I'm just saying that'd be a cool mount.
Yeah,
you think about that.
Yeah, I'd
a full body mount.
Oh, jeez. I got a little room down the basement. I mean, it's wall to wall now.
Whatever, dude. You put it in front yard.
There you go. You could do that. But that'd be a little pricey to be sticking out in the front yard. Somebody might steal the horn.
Oh, man. You put like an alarm on it or something. I don't know. That's cool, though. Like, no, Africa, that'd be super rad. But I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things where you get there and you see all these awesome animals and you're appreciating them, and then you're like, you know what? I want to bring you home.
I had a friend that had a whole bunch of them, but yeah, he had a cabin up at Bear Lake, and we used to go up there and have some real fun times. There was, when I was single, there was about 8 or 10 of us used to meet once a month, and all we talk about is hunting and fishing, and take turns buying lunch. And he had a cabin up there, and we went up there 2 or 3 times, and all 10 of us, he'd build a dormitory out to the side just for that purpose, and we'd sit up there. He had a hot tub and cook steaks and all kinds of stuff and talk about hunting and fishing. And that's where one of the guys had been at Florida hunting alligators, and he's the one that put that in my on my bucket list to do, is because of he was talking about it. But anyway,
that's cool. No, I mean, that long list of different animals. I know, Steve's dad, he had a super cool zebra rug. He got a warthog and he had a zebra rug. And I was always like, man, you should have shot a giraffe. I mean, that'd be just awesome. I mean, think about that rug, like the big long neck, be like the runner down the hallway.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just, something to think about. Just put it in your back of your mind if you think about getting a giraffe. But obviously, moose is kind of a little bit of more of a price point, and wolves. We've covered that. Wait, anything else that you're looking at? I mean, you talked about
Not really about I think I'm about to the end of the road. I got bad knees and I can't hike like I used to. So I don't know what else and I don't have any more room down the basement.
Man, what you need to do is have your wife move out, and then you got a ton more room.
let me tell you that I've done that a couple of times, and that's a lot more expensive than the moose hunt.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. Yeah. What? We're kidding, Linda. We're kidding. So, what? So nothing else really on your list? Nothing that's like tickling your fancy that you're like, you know what? This is the last. This is the my what do they call it? Your Magnus Opus.
The swan song.
Yeah, like your not even your swan song, but like your Moby Dick. You're beating on your chest, you're like trying to like take down this one last thing.
No, I can't think of any. I really like hunting antelope, and I'm looking forward. I should draw out next year for that. But I've already killed. I've already had 3 of those, and so just because it's fun, it's like, I'll tell you, bear hunting is one of the funnest things I do. I really enjoyed that a lot. It's quite a kick.
Yeah, you and your jelly beans.
But yeah, well, not the well, yeah. But I went up. We went up to Idaho. Did I tell you that one?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, about the only other hunting story I probably ought to tell is my crow story.
You did.
I did tell that one?
Yeah, about hunting the crows and you had to eat it.
I told that one?
You sure did.
I didn't remember that. Well, that's what
you should probably watch these.
I did. But, anyway.
No, that's for sure. But yeah, they no, think about it, because I mean, really honestly, like, you got to remember you are. I mean, you're getting to that point where you probably can't go hike around and go like hunt like you used to. However, you still got some time left. And so really honestly, it's one of those things where it's like, why not like get that one last thing, and really honestly, it's like, you think about it, like $2,500 for a turkey, Christmas is coming, and that's one of those things that, is definitely, could be maybe wrapped under the tree. I don't know. Maybe Santa brings you a turkey hunt. Maybe Santa brings you, probably not a polar bear, because I don't think you can hunt those.
Yeah, you can.
You can?
Oh, yeah.
Well.
Yeah, they just, contrary to Al Gore, polar bears, there are more polar bears now than there have been in a long, long time. They're on the increase. And in fact it was there for quite a while. It was illegal. You could go to Alaska, not Alaska, but up into Canada, up in the Northwest Territories, and hunt polar bear, but you could not bring him back in the United States. And when I went to the SCI show, it's been about 20 years ago now, they had just barely lifted that, and there must have been 10 polar bears that they brought to the SCI show that had been sitting up in Canada for 5, 6, 7 years.
That's awesome.
But
I can only imagine this polar bear just sitting on the border, waiting, just wanting to come into America.
Well, Some guy who would harvest it was wanting it back into America. That's for sure. I had a friend of mine that went up there hunting him, and they just go out on the ice pack. Polar bears, a black bear usually will run from you. A brown bear will take you or leave you. It just depends. But a polar bear will come after you every time. And so what they would do is they just went out on the ice pack and sit there. And he said that the guide said there was one, and they had the spotting scope on it, and the bear had its nose in the air, sniffing, and it'd start towards him, and then it'd lose the scent, and then it'd sniff, and then it'd get the scent, and until he locked onto him, and then here he come running across the ice right at him. And he says, I was so fascinated with it that I just sit there and watch it come after us. And the guide said, you better get ready. So he laid down on the ice pack with a backpack as to prop the rifle up with. And when it got within about 100 yards, he shot it. But they just come after you. They don't. There's no question about that. That's the way they hunt them. You don't have to hunt polar bear. They hunt you.
See, that sounds exciting. That's what I'm saying. That's a hunt. It's like it was me or him. It came down.
The only problem I thought about is what happens if he comes in the middle of the night instead of in the middle of where you can see him coming.
Well, that's why you don't stay on the ice pack overnight.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah,
I'll probably go back into town. I don't know.
Maybe that's
let the Eskimo take it on.
There
That's
you
all
go.
I'm saying. Well, awesome. Well, our time's up. It's been enjoyable. A lot of fun talking about some of the animals that are out there in the world that are still taunting you.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I would say. I would give it some thought and give you a little bit of a challenge to think about. Maybe not even one last hurrah, because that's not the way I would say it, or a swan songs or anything like that. It would be just like that thing, your magnus opus, your crowning achievement, your rhinoceros mounted in your living room.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what I'd say. I'd just think about that and see what you can come up with, because there are definitely still tons and tons of opportunities to get out there.
I've thought about that and did what I'm going to have to do instead is hire a guide like I did with the buffalo hunt. I was 71 when I went on the buffalo hunt, but I hired a guide. It cost me a few bucks, but it was really enjoyable. I really got a good kick out of it.
No, that's cool.
I didn't have to do a lot of work either.
And that's what it's about, So, well, good for you. So, anyway, anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I don't think so. I think
right.
that's good enough for tonight.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks again for coming out. Thanks again to my man Marcus and allowing us the opportunity to be able to be here. Appreciate him and all the hard work that he does editing and putting this together and making it look good and making us look good, making us sound good. Maybe I'd get him to write me a script next time. But anyway, thanks again. Episode 11. And y'all have a great night. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good.